What if evolution didn't make something stronger or smarter, but stranger? What if survival meant eating poison, sleeping for 20 hours a day, and climbing trees with fingerprints like a human? Koalas seem like nature's mistake, but what if their bizarre biology is actually a hidden masterpiece? Their story isn't just cute, it's one of the weirdest and most fascinating paths evolution has ever taken. The koala is one of Australia's most iconic animals, often seen as a sleepy tree dweller munching on eucalyptus leaves. But behind its soft and harmless appearance lies a truly strange evolutionary journey. Koalas are marsupials, meaning they give birth to tiny, underdeveloped young that continue developing in the mother's pouch. But even among marsupials, the koala stands out. Its diet, anatomy, brain size, reproduction, and survival strategy all seem to be the result of evolutionary twists that don't make much sense at first glance. Yet somehow, the koala has survived millions of years, adapting to one of the harshest diets in the animal kingdom in a very narrow ecological niche. Koalas are found only in Australia, where they live in eucalyptus forests and woodlands. They are highly territorial and solitary creatures, with each individual maintaining a home range that provides access to the few types of eucalyptus leaves they can actually digest. Despite there being over 700 types of eucalyptus trees in Australia, koalas only eat leaves from about 30 of them. This incredibly picky diet is just the beginning of their evolutionary oddities. Eucalyptus leaves are toxic to most animals. They're low in nutrients, high in fibrous material, and packed with chemicals that are meant to deter herbivores. Koalas are one of the very few animals that can tolerate them, thanks to a highly specialized digestive system that includes a long cecum and a gut microbiome adapted to break down the toxins. However, this adaptation comes at a cost. Koalas have to sleep for up to 20 hours a day to conserve energy, since their food provides so little of it. The koala's digestive system is not only long, but extremely selective. Young koalas have to eat their mother's feces, known as pap, to inoculate their gut with the right bacteria needed to digest eucalyptus. This unusual weaning process ensures that the joey's system is equipped to handle the leaves, but it also ties the survival of each generation to a very specific and limited biological setup. Without pap, the joey simply wouldn't survive. It's another example of how tightly their evolution has been linked to their diet, which in turn has led to one of the most restricted and vulnerable ecological strategies in the animal kingdom. Koalas have fingerprints that are nearly indistinguishable from human ones, even under a microscope. This is a rare trait in the animal world and is thought to have evolved independently in koalas and primates as a way to improve grip on tree branches. But beyond this adaptation, their evolutionary path gets even stranger. Their brain is unusually small for their body size. In fact, it's so small that their skull has a lot of unused space. The koala's brain is smooth rather than folded, which is usually associated with lower intelligence. Some researchers believe that the koala's brain has actually shrunk over time as a trade-off for their low-energy diet. Having a large, active brain requires a lot of energy, and with eucalyptus being such poor fuel, the koala might have adapted by giving up cognitive capacity in favor of survival. This leads to some truly bizarre behaviors. For example, koalas will sometimes mistake man-made structures like roads or fences for tree trunks. They can also be incredibly poor at finding new food sources or adapting to environmental changes. This lack of behavioral flexibility has become a major issue in the face of habitat destruction and climate change. Koalas are so specialized for a narrow diet and specific habitat conditions that even slight changes in their environment can be disastrous. And yet, they've managed to cling to existence for millions of years. Defying what seems like a very fragile evolutionary setup, the koala's reproductive system adds to the complexity. Female koalas give birth to one joey per year, and the young stay in the pouch for about 6 months before beginning to explore the outside world. After emerging, the joey will ride on its mother's back, continuing to nurse and gradually transitioning to eucalyptus leaves. The reproductive rate is slow, and infant mortality can be high, especially in stressed populations. Unlike some other animals that produce many offspring to ensure survival of the species, koalas invest heavily in each individual joey. This slow reproduction makes it harder for populations to recover from major losses caused by disease, fire, or habitat clearing. One of the strangest chapters in koala evolution lies in their ancient ancestors. Fossil evidence suggests that the modern koala evolved from a now extinct group of wombat-like marsupials. Over time, some of these animals adapted to life in the trees, likely to avoid predators and access new food sources. But instead of developing a more varied or energy-rich diet like fruit or insects, koalas specialized in one of the least nutritious and most toxic plant foods available. It's as if evolution took a gamble and doubled down on a losing hand, but somehow made it work. The specialization was so extreme that it shaped nearly every part of the koala's biology, from their low metabolism to their small brains and selective behavior. The evolutionary pressure to adapt to eucalyptus likely came from a lack of competition. Few animals could or would eat eucalyptus, so once the koala's ancestors developed a way to process it, they had exclusive access to a massive food resource. This niche domination may have shielded them from competition, but also locked them into a very narrow survival path. While other animals evolved to exploit diverse environments, koalas became experts in one. It's a strategy that works well in stable environments, but leaves them highly vulnerable when conditions change. Modern challenges for koalas are many. Urban development has fragmented their habitats, making it harder for populations to find mates and access new food sources. Roads, dog attacks, and bushfires further reduce their numbers. Climate change adds yet another layer of stress by affecting eucalyptus trees themselves. As trees become more water-stressed, the nutritional quality of their leaves declines, making them even harder for koalas to digest. Diseases like chlamydia, which can cause infertility and blindness, have also spread through many wild populations, compounding the threat. Conservation efforts have ramped up in recent years, with protected habitats, wildlife corridors, and medical interventions being implemented. But saving the koala is not just about preserving a species. It's about maintaining a unique evolutionary story that stretches back tens of millions of years. The koala is a living example of how strange and unpredictable evolution can be. It shows how survival doesn't always mean being the smartest, fastest, or most adaptable. Sometimes it's about finding a very specific niche and committing to it with everything you've got, no matter how bizarre that commitment might look to outside observers. In the end, the koala's story is a mix of evolutionary brilliance and dangerous over-specialization. It thrived by doing something no other animal wanted to do, but now struggles because it can do almost nothing else. It's a creature that has evolved to live life in slow motion, high in the trees, relying on leaves that would kill most other animals. Every part of its biology is a result of that evolutionary gamble. From its microbial gut partners to its small brain, from its low reproductive rate to its strange social behavior, the koala is one of nature's most peculiar success stories. Whether that story continues depends on how well we understand and protect the fragile systems that keep it alive. Koalas have also developed some interesting anatomical adaptations to support their tree-dwelling lifestyle. Their limbs are perfectly built for climbing, with strong forearms, powerful thigh muscles, and long, sharp claws that help them grip onto bark. Each hand has 2 opposable digits, functioning almost like thumbs, which allow for a precise grasp of branches and leaves. The rough pads on their palms and soles also help with grip, giving them a firm hold even when they sleep. Their toes are equally specialized, with one toe fused into a grooming claw used to keep their fur clean. All of this makes koalas expert climbers, able to navigate the treetops with surprising agility despite their slow and sleepy appearance. Their curved spine and strong tail base give them a good balance while perched in the crooks of branches, which is where they spend most of their lives. Even their vocalizations are unusual. Koalas are generally quiet animals, but during mating season, males emit deep, guttural bellows that sound like a combination of a pig grunt and a chainsaw. These sounds are produced by a highly specialized vocal organ located in their chest cavity, a trait not shared by most other mammals. The sound serves to warn off rival males and attract females. Interestingly, the pitch and volume of the call are much lower than what you'd expect from an animal of their size, which can create the illusion of a much larger creature. This might have evolutionary advantages when it comes to intimidating rivals or projecting sound across long distances in the dense forests where they live. Another key point in koala behavior is their social structure, or rather, the lack of one. Koalas are solitary animals. Each individual maintains a home range that may overlap with others, but they generally avoid interaction unless it's for mating. Males are particularly territorial, marking their trees with scent glands located on their chests. These glands produce an oily substance that carries their individual scent, which communicates dominance and reproductive status. While koalas don't form complex social bonds like primates or elephants, their territories are part of a subtle network of spatial relationships that determine access to mates, food, and safe resting spots. Even without direct interaction, they are aware of their neighbors through scent and sound, maintaining an invisible social map of their environment. When it comes to environmental resilience, koalas show both strengths and weaknesses. On one hand, their specialized diet and low-energy lifestyle mean they don't need to compete for food with many other animals. On the other hand, their reliance on specific types of eucalyptus makes them extremely vulnerable to changes in forest composition, whether from human activity, drought, or fire. The Australian bushfire season of 2019 to 2020 was a devastating example of this vulnerability. Thousands of koalas were killed, injured, or displaced as millions of acres of forest burned. In some areas, up to 80% of koala habitat was destroyed. Rescue efforts were mounted by wildlife organizations and volunteers who worked to save injured animals and rehabilitate them. But the long-term consequences of such widespread habitat loss are still being felt. Even as forests regrow, it can take years before eucalyptus trees reach the age and conditions suitable for koala feeding in captivity. Koalas are famously difficult to care for, again due to their specialized diet. Zoos must import or grow specific species of eucalyptus and monitor the freshness and toxicity levels of the leaves carefully. Koalas also do not respond well to stress. Being solitary animals with a narrow range of acceptable conditions, they can quickly fall ill if kept in unsuitable environments. Despite their popularity, breeding programs are challenging, and not all attempts at captive conservation have been successful. However, some sanctuaries in Australia have made strides in understanding their needs and creating more naturalistic enclosures, which help koalas live longer, healthier lives in human care. The genetics of koalas have also become a focus in conservation biology. Researchers are sequencing the koala genome to better understand their immune systems, particularly in light of diseases like chlamydia and koala retrovirus. Chlamydia affects more than half of all wild koalas in some populations and can cause infertility, blindness, and death if untreated. Koala retrovirus, on the other hand, is a virus that has become integrated into the koala genome. It is linked to immune suppression and higher susceptibility to other infections and cancers. Studying these diseases at the genetic level offers hope for vaccines and treatments, which could become critical tools in the effort to save the species. Another layer to the koala's strange, evolutionary tale is their auditory and olfactory senses. Despite their small brains, koalas have highly developed hearing and smell. Their large, fluffy ears pick up a wide range of frequencies, helping them detect distant calls from other koalas. Their sense of smell is crucial in food selection and territory marking. Eucalyptus leaves vary in their toxicity and water content depending on the season and region, and koalas can detect these differences through scent. They will often sniff a branch or leaf before deciding whether to eat it. This sensory acuity allows them to select the safest and most nutritious leaves available at any given time, a skill that's absolutely vital given the toxic nature of their diet. Koalas also play a role in the ecosystem, albeit a limited one due to their solitary and low-energy lifestyle. By feeding selectively on eucalyptus leaves, they influence the growth and health of trees in subtle ways. Their droppings return nutrients to the soil, and their presence in the forest canopy adds to the biodiversity of the ecosystem. While they are not a keystone species in the same way as elephants or wolves, their conservation still matters deeply because their survival reflects the overall health of Australia's forest ecosystems. One might wonder why evolution didn't drive koalas toward a more adaptable or diverse lifestyle. In most cases, highly specialized animals face extinction when their narrow niche is disrupted. Yet koalas have persisted. The answer may lie in the unique and relatively stable environment of Australia's eucalyptus forests, which allowed for long-term specialization without much evolutionary pressure to diversify. But now, as environmental conditions become more unpredictable, that same specialization has become a liability. It's a classic evolutionary trade-off. Success in a stable niche can lead to vulnerability when things change. And today, the pace of environmental change is faster than anything koalas have ever faced before. There's also a strange irony in how humans perceive koalas. Their cuddly appearance, slow movements, and calm demeanor make them beloved around the world. Yet these traits are byproducts of extreme dietary limitations and evolutionary compromise. They sleep most of the time, not because they're lazy or relaxed, but because their bodies simply don't have the energy to stay awake much longer. Their sluggishness is a biological necessity, and their apparent gentleness masks a strong territorial instinct and surprising toughness. When cornered, koalas can fight back with claws and bites, showing that even the sleepiest creatures still have the will to survive. Koalas have become symbols of Australian wildlife, often used in tourism campaigns and conservation messaging. But that symbolism has to be backed by action. Saving the koala is about more than just protecting an adorable animal. It's about understanding and respecting the intricate and often precarious web of evolution and ecology that allowed such a strange creature to exist. It's about recognizing that even the most unique and specialized life forms need space, safety, and stability to survive. The future of koalas depends on both large-scale environmental efforts and small, community-driven actions. Preserving and restoring eucalyptus forests is the most critical step. Creating wildlife corridors to connect fragmented habitats can help koalas move freely and maintain genetic diversity. Supporting research into disease prevention and treatment, especially vaccines for chlamydia, offers another path forward. Education also plays a role. When people understand the true nature of koalas, their biology, their needs, their evolution, they're more likely to support policies that protect them. In essence, koalas are living fossils of an ancient evolutionary path that chose depth over breadth. They didn't adapt to many environments, didn't diversify their diet, and didn't evolve social complexity. Instead, They perfected a highly specialized strategy and held on to it for millions of years. That strategy worked well until it didn't. Now, in the face of human-driven change, the very traits that once ensured their survival are placing them at risk. But with the right knowledge and action, humans can give this strange and beautiful species a chance to continue its journey. Evolution made koalas weird. It's up to us to make sure weirdness survives. Even with all the odds stacked against them, koalas continue to persist in isolated pockets of forest across Australia. Their resilience is often underestimated because of their sluggish appearance and highly specific needs, but the fact that they've survived for so long speaks to the effectiveness of their evolutionary path, even if it is a strange one. These animals have existed in some form for more than 25 million years, adapting slowly over time to the eucalyptus forests that gradually spread across Australia. The evolutionary bottleneck that led them to become such specialized feeders also made them uniquely vulnerable, but it didn't wipe them out. Not yet. Fossil records show that ancient koalas were once more diverse, both in size and habitat preference. Some extinct relatives of today's koalas were as large as small bears, suggesting that early koalas occupied a wider range of ecological roles. Over time, as Australia became more arid and the dominance of eucalyptus increased, modern koalas evolved to exploit this singular food source more effectively. This shift likely occurred over millions of years, gradually phasing out more generalist behaviors in favor of ultra-specialization. What we now see as a narrow and limited lifestyle was once a powerful evolutionary adaptation to a changing continent. Their molars are also specially shaped to grind down the fibrous leaves they consume. Koalas have a dental structure that allows them to shear and break down eucalyptus in a way that makes digestion slightly more efficient. Over the years, their teeth wear down significantly, and older koalas often die from starvation when their teeth are no longer capable of processing their food. Tooth wear is one of the natural causes of death in wild koalas, and is a quiet but constant force shaping population longevity. This highlights once again how every part of their biology is interwoven with the challenge of digesting a toxic and low-nutrient diet. Young koalas, or joeys, undergo a transformation from helpless, jelly bean-sized newborns to fully independent climbers in just a matter of months. After crawling into the pouch immediately after birth, they latch onto a teat and begin a rapid period of growth, nourished by the mother's milk. As they begin to outgrow the pouch, they transition to clinging onto their mother's back. During this period, the mother produces pap, the specially processed fecal matter that helps seed the joey's gut with essential bacteria. This one-off feeding is critical. Without it, the joey's gut would be unable to handle eucalyptus, and it would die soon after weaning. It's a behavior found in no other animal on Earth. Just one more example of the koala's evolutionary oddity. In terms of their sensory world, koalas navigate using more than just vision. Their excellent hearing and highly developed olfactory sense help them distinguish not just eucalyptus species, but also the chemical signatures of individual trees. These differences can tell a koala whether a tree is water-stressed, high in toxins, or in a state suitable for feeding. Koalas are known to return to the same trees repeatedly, showing a sort of spatial memory that likely helps conserve energy by avoiding the need to sample unfamiliar or unsuitable trees. This kind of memory, while not necessarily complex, shows that koalas do engage with their environment in a meaningful and selective way again. Not dumb, just extremely specialized. Another curious behavior is their tendency to hug tree trunks during extreme heat. Research has shown that koalas use the cooler surfaces of tree bark as a natural form of temperature regulation. When temperatures soar, koalas press their bodies against the shady side of a tree, transferring heat and reducing the need for evaporative cooling through panting or licking their fur. This strategy helps conserve water and energy, which are both precious resources for an animal that rarely drinks. Most of their hydration comes from eucalyptus leaves, though they will drink from water sources if absolutely necessary, especially during heat waves or droughts. These subtle behaviors are crucial for surviving in Australia's often punishing climate. Even their fur plays a role in their survival. Koalas have thick, insulating fur that varies in density depending on the region. In colder southern climates, koalas have longer, shaggier coats to help retain warmth, while those in the north tend to have shorter fur, better suited for heat dissipation. Their fur is also water repellent, which protects them during rain. Despite looking soft, it's quite coarse and oily, adapted more for function than comfort. It helps to repel moisture and insulate against both cold and heat. This regional variation is a subtle yet clear example of how even within a highly specialized species, microevolution continues to shape traits according to local environmental pressures. Human interactions with koalas have been both destructive and, more recently, redemptive. In the early 20th century, koalas were hunted in vast numbers for their fur. Millions were killed, and populations plummeted. The backlash to this slaughter led to some of the earliest conservation movements in Australia, and protections were eventually put in place. Today, hunting koalas is illegal, and they are listed as vulnerable across most of their range. However, the modern threats they face are less visible but just as dangerous. Urban development has carved up their habitats, creating isolated patches of forest surrounded by roads and buildings. This fragmentation not only limits access to food and mates, but also increases the chances of vehicle collisions and domestic dog attacks, which are two leading causes of death in urban edge koala populations. Additionally, stress caused by habitat disturbance weakens their immune systems, making them more susceptible to diseases like chlamydia. In some populations, the infection rate is over 90%. Chlamydia can be treated with antibiotics in captivity, but treating wild populations is far more complex. There's ongoing research into developing a vaccine, and field trials are already underway. The hope is that with widespread immunization, populations could begin to recover. Koala retrovirus, or KORV, complicates this effort as it can interfere with immune responses and increase vulnerability to other diseases. Scientists are still trying to understand the full implications of KORV and how it has influenced the health and evolution of the species. There's also been an increase in citizen science and community involvement in koala conservation. Apps and platforms allow residents to report sightings, track movements, and even assist in rescue efforts. Wildlife corridors, strips of connected habitat that allow animals to travel between isolated forest patches, are being created in some regions to give koalas safer passage through fragmented landscapes. These efforts are small in the grand scheme, but incredibly important for long-term survival. Koalas cannot adapt quickly to changing environments, but with help, their habitats can be made more hospitable again. In educational settings, koalas are often introduced as a case study for evolutionary specialization. They are one of the best examples of what happens when a species becomes almost completely dependent on a single resource. This dependency has forced evolution to mold their bodies, brains, behaviors, and even social structures around that single resource. The result is an animal that seems quirky, inefficient, and fragile, but is also uniquely equipped to live in its narrow ecological role. In a way, koalas are a cautionary tale about putting all your evolutionary eggs in one basket. Yet they're also a testament to how life finds a way, however strange or improbable that path might be if the goal of evolution is simply to survive and reproduce. And koalas have done that. They've weathered millions of years of environmental shifts, climatic changes, and now the challenges of human expansion. The question is whether their long evolutionary gamble can hold out just a little longer long enough for us to make. Room for them in the future we're building. Because in the end, koalas aren't just a symbol of Australia or a quirky tourist attraction. They're the product of millions of years of survival against the odds. Their story is our responsibility. Now, the delicate relationship between koalas and their environment is something scientists are still trying to fully understand. One of the key discoveries in recent decades has been just how much the survival of koalas depends on the health of eucalyptus forests. These trees don't just provide food, they offer shelter, breeding sites, and even help regulate the microclimate that koalas depend on. Trees with dense foliage protect them from temperature extremes and predators. But as climate change continues to alter rainfall patterns and increase the frequency of droughts, eucalyptus trees themselves are under stress. When a eucalyptus tree becomes water stressed, it produces more toxins in its leaves as a defense mechanism. For koalas, that means less digestible food and even greater energy expenditure just to survive. This becomes a compounding problem. As the leaves become more toxic, koalas have to spend more time searching for safe trees, often traveling longer distances across dangerous terrain. This exposes them to predators, vehicles, and territorial conflicts with other koalas. At the same time, they're taking in fewer nutrients and water from each leaf they consume. It's a slow decline that can eventually lead to starvation, dehydration, or disease. In this way, climate change doesn't always kill koalas directly. Instead, it chips away at the fragile support system they depend on, one leaf at a time. What makes the koala's evolutionary story so compelling is how much it highlights the delicate balance of specialization. Evolution gave the koala just what it needed to thrive in one specific niche and nothing more. That kind of success is impressive in a stable ecosystem, but becomes a dangerous gamble when conditions start to shift. Unlike generalist species, like raccoons or crows that can adapt to a variety of environments, koalas are essentially locked into their lifestyle. They can't suddenly switch to eating another plant, move to a different habitat, or begin living in groups to increase protection. Their entire existence is built around the slow, solitary consumption of a toxic leaf in a very specific kind of forest. The challenge of urbanization compounds these problems. As human cities and towns expand into once forested areas, koalas are often forced to navigate suburban landscapes filled with roads, fences, and unfamiliar threats. Many people are surprised to learn that koalas are quite mobile when necessary. Though they sleep most of the day, they can travel several kilometers in search of mates or new trees. This movement becomes dangerous in fragmented environments. Roads, in particular, are a serious threat. Koalas aren't fast movers, and their natural instinct when threatened is to climb the nearest vertical surface. Unfortunately, this sometimes means they try to climb power poles or fences instead of trees. Wildlife crossings have been introduced in some regions, including tunnels and rope bridges that allow animals to cross roads safely. These projects have shown promise, but are still too limited in scope to make a major difference nationwide. A broader commitment to coexistence is needed, one that involves city planners, local governments, and the general public. People living in koala habitats can make small changes, like planting appropriate eucalyptus species, keeping dogs restrained, and reporting injured or sick animals. These actions add up, creating a safer and more navigable world for koalas within human-altered landscapes. Diseases remain a serious threat to koala populations. Chlamydia, as mentioned earlier, is widespread and often devastating. Symptoms can include conjunctivitis, urinary tract infections, infertility, and even death. The spread is worsened by stress, which weakens the immune system. Koalas already live with a delicate balance of health due to their poor diet, so any added stressor, whether it's noise, habitat disruption, or heat waves can tip the scales. Researchers have been developing a vaccine for chlamydia, and trials are underway in the field. These efforts are showing promise, with vaccinated individuals showing better health outcomes and lower infection rates. However, administering the vaccine widely across wild populations is a massive logistical challenge. Koala retrovirus, KORV, is another emerging concern. Unlike chlamydia, which is spread through contact and mating, KORV is partly inherited genetically. It is present in all northern koalas and is increasingly being found in southern populations. This virus can suppress the immune system, making it harder for koalas to fight off infections and diseases. It has also been linked to certain types of cancers. Scientists are still working to understand how KORV behaves and whether there are ways to counteract its effects. One possible avenue is breeding individuals with natural resistance. Though this too is complicated by the fragmented and declining gene pool of wild koalas, one fascinating area of research is koala vocalization. The loud bellows of males are well known, but recent studies suggest that koalas have a more complex communication system than previously thought. They use different calls for mating, territorial warnings, and even low-level social interactions. Females have been observed vocalizing to their young and to nearby males, sometimes to indicate receptivity, other times to reject advances. These vocalizations are an important part of koala life and show that, despite their solitary nature, they maintain a form of acoustic connection to others in their environment. Sound travels far in the still air of the eucalyptus forest, and koalas use this to maintain their invisible social map. Koalas also provide insights into marsupial reproduction more broadly. Their reproductive system, while typical of marsupials, is incredibly efficient in its own way. A development of young in the pouch protects the fragile newborns from environmental hazards, and lactation provides nutrients matched to the joey's growth stage. The ability to produce pap at exactly the right time is another layer of complexity. It's a form of maternal investment that has no counterpart in placental mammals. Every stage of a koala's early life is intricately timed and biologically supported, reflecting millions of years of adaptation to their unique lifestyle. Despite their fame, koalas are still misunderstood by much of the world. They're often portrayed as lazy or unchanging animals, but this overlooks the evolutionary logic behind their behaviors. Everything about them, from their energy-saving sleep patterns to their cautious tree-hopping movements, is designed for survival within the strict limits of their chosen niche. Their laziness is actually a finely tuned energy conservation strategy. Their slow digestion is what allows them to process the tough, toxic leaves that would poison or starve most other herbivores. Far from being passive, koalas are engaged in a constant balancing act, managing their limited energy, monitoring the quality of their food, and avoiding unnecessary risks. Koalas are also a case study in how public perception can shape conservation outcomes. Because they're cute and well-loved, koalas receive more media attention and funding than many other endangered species. This has helped fund vital research and habitat protection programs. But it also creates a paradox. People assume koalas are safe because they see them in zoos, on tourist brochures, and in cartoons. This perception can lead to complacency. In reality, wild populations are declining in many parts of Australia, and without strong and sustained conservation measures, koalas could disappear from large parts of their historical range within a few decades. Genetic diversity is another pressing issue. Many of the koala populations in the southern parts of Australia are descended from just a few individuals relocated to new areas after local extinctions. This bottleneck has resulted in low genetic variability, which can increase susceptibility to disease and reduce adaptability to environmental changes. Conservationists are now exploring the potential of genetic mixing bringing individuals from different regions together to strengthen the gene pool. This approach must be handled carefully to avoid unintended consequences, but it may be essential for the long-term survival of the species. Ultimately, the future of koalas rests in our hands. They have done their part by surviving against incredible odds for millions of years. Evolution gave them tools that worked in one specific context, and for a long time, that was enough. But the modern world has changed too quickly and too drastically for them to adapt on their own. We must choose whether we will continue to reshape the world without regard for the species we displace, or whether we can learn to share space with the wild, even when it's inconvenient or costly. Preserving koalas means protecting the forests they live in, supporting scientific research, and fostering a culture that values all forms of life, not just the useful or profitable ones. It means recognizing that the strange and wonderful outcomes of evolution deserve a place in our shared future. Because when we lose a species like the koala, we don't just lose an animal. We lose a unique story, a singular solution that nature found to the puzzle of life. And those stories, once gone, cannot be written again. There is a poetic irony in how koalas, a species shaped by millions of years of narrow specialization, have become dependent on human actions for their continued survival. The same species that once thrived by withdrawing into a unique ecological niche now finds itself vulnerable because that niche is disappearing. Forests are cleared for agriculture, housing, and infrastructure. Wildfires rage more intensely than ever before. Water sources dry up. Diseases spread with greater ease. These are not challenges that koalas can adapt to in a generation or two. Their biology isn't built for rapid change. Instead, their fate now hinges on how quickly and effectively humans can reverse or mitigate the damage we've caused. One of the most powerful tools we have in protecting koalas is habitat conservation. Large, connected areas of eucalyptus forest allow koalas to move freely, find mates, escape disease outbreaks, and maintain healthy genetic diversity. Fragmentation is one of the biggest threats because it traps populations in small, isolated patches where inbreeding, disease, and starvation are more likely. Corridors that connect these patches, strips of protected land that allow safe passage, are becoming essential. When planned well, these corridors not only benefit koalas, but a whole range of other species that rely on forested habitats. But protecting habitat isn't just about land, it's about the quality of the trees. Koalas are not generalists. They need certain types of eucalyptus that are suitable for feeding and others that are ideal for resting. Some trees are used primarily for shelter due to their thick canopies or location, while others are chosen for their more palatable leaves. When forests are replanted or restored, it's not enough to just plant any eucalyptus. Conservationists must consider which species are preferred by local koalas and how their placement affects koala movement and safety. Yet another vital aspect of koala conservation is fire management. Australia is naturally prone to bushfires, but the intensity and frequency of these fires have increased dramatically in recent years. Climate change has extended the fire season and made conditions more volatile. Koalas are particularly vulnerable to fire because they live in the canopy and tend to respond to danger by climbing higher rather than fleeing. When fires sweep through, they often have nowhere to go. In the aftermath, even survivors face a devastated environment with little food or shelter. Some new fire management strategies focus on creating koala fire refuges, areas within forests that are less likely to burn and can serve as safe zones during and after fires. These might be areas with natural fire breaks, wetter microclimates, or landscapes that can be artificially managed to reduce flammability. During fire season, rescue teams and wildlife hospitals also play a key role, responding to reports of injured koalas and providing critical care. While not every koala can be saved, each rescue effort helps raise awareness and keeps the species in the public eye. Technology is playing a growing role in conservation as well. Drones are now used to monitor koala populations from above, spotting individuals through infrared cameras, even when they're hidden in dense foliage. This allows researchers to track numbers, observe behavior, and assess health without disturbing the animals. Acoustic sensors are also being deployed in forests to record koala vocalizations. These sensors help scientists identify where koalas are living, how active they are, and whether new individuals have entered an area. This passive monitoring is less invasive and more efficient than traditional survey methods. Data gathered from these technologies feed into national databases that help guide policy decisions. In Australia, koalas are now recognized as a species in need of urgent attention, and various state and federal laws have been introduced to protect them. However, enforcement remains a challenge. Development projects often proceed despite the presence of koalas, and legal loopholes sometimes allow habitat destruction to continue. Activists, researchers, and local communities must constantly fight to ensure that existing protections are respected and strengthened. Legal victories can be slow and hard-won, but each one helps shape a more secure future for koalas. Community involvement remains one of the most powerful drivers of change. In many regions, local residents have become the eyes and ears of koala conservation. They report sightings, organize tree planting events, campaign against harmful developments, and support wildlife hospitals through donations and volunteering. Schools are incorporating koala education into their curricula, helping the next generation understand not only the biology of these animals, but the importance of environmental stewardship. Public awareness campaigns use social media, documentaries, and interactive tools to keep koalas in the spotlight and remind people that extinction is not a distant threat. It's something that can happen in real time. Tourism also has a part to play, though it must be carefully managed. Koalas are a major attraction in Australia, and their image is used to promote everything from national parks to city festivals. Ecotourism ventures that allow people to observe koalas in the wild can be a source of funding for conservation, provided that the animal's welfare is prioritized. Overexposure, noise, and human presence can stress koalas, especially in areas where they're already under pressure. Responsible tourism organizations now offer experiences that balance access with education and protection. One area where more work is needed is the integration of indigenous knowledge into conservation. Planning. Aboriginal Australians have lived alongside koalas for tens of thousands of years and possess deep knowledge of the land, its rhythms, and its species. Involving indigenous communities in koala conservation not only honors this wisdom, but can lead to more effective and sustainable outcomes. Fire management is one key area where traditional practices, such as controlled burns, timed to the seasonal cycle, are being reintroduced with positive results. There is also growing interest in the idea of rewilding koalas into areas where they were once common but have disappeared. This is a delicate process. Reintroducing animals to the wild requires careful consideration of habitat quality, food availability, predator presence, and potential for disease transmission. Still, some trials have been successful, and they offer hope that with the right planning and support, koalas can reclaim parts of their former range. These efforts are not just about increasing numbers. They're about restoring the ecological integrity of landscapes and rebuilding the ancient relationships between species and their environments. As we look ahead, the story of the koala serves as both a warning and a beacon. It warns us of the dangers of unchecked development, climate inaction, and environmental ignorance. But it also shows us what is possible when people care deeply and act decisively. The koala is not doomed, not yet. There is still time to protect what remains, restore what has been damaged, and ensure that future generations can hear the low bellow of a koala echoing through eucalyptus forests. The koala's odd evolution, the shrinking brain, the toxic diet, the solitary life makes it seem like an unlikely survivor. And perhaps it is. But it is also a powerful reminder that life doesn't need to be efficient or flashy to be successful. Sometimes it's the quiet, slow, and peculiar strategies that persist the longest. Nature never intended for koalas to impress us with speed or intelligence. Instead, they succeeded by doing one thing extraordinarily well. They found a niche that no one else wanted and made it their home dot in a rapidly changing world. That strategy is under siege. But if humans can adapt, if we can use our intelligence, empathy, and innovation to safeguard the lives of other species, then perhaps we can give the koala's strange and beautiful story a few more chapters. Because what evolution began, we now have the power to protect, and in doing so, we protect more than just a species. We protect the richness of life itself. As efforts to preserve koalas gain momentum, one of the most important questions conservationists face is how to balance short-term survival with long-term sustainability. Emergency measures like wildlife rescue, disease treatment, and fire response are essential to address immediate threats, but they must be paired with strategies that ensure the species can thrive well into the future without relying indefinitely on human intervention. This challenge highlights a central paradox of conservation. The goal is not just to keep animals alive, but to re-establish the natural systems that once allowed them to flourish independently. For koalas, this means prioritizing landscape scale conservation. Rather than focusing only on isolated pockets of habitat, scientists now emphasize the need to restore entire ecosystems, reconnecting fragmented forests, reintroducing biodiversity, and managing land in ways that support not just koalas, but all of the organisms that make up their ecological web. Koalas do not live in a vacuum. Their health and survival are tied to the trees they feed on, the insects and fungi that interact with those trees, and the predators, competitors, and symbiotic species around them. When any piece of that web is removed or destabilized, the entire system can begin to unravel. One often overlooked aspect of this ecological web is the role of soil. Healthy eucalyptus forests require balanced soil ecosystems with the right mix of nutrients, microbial life, and moisture retention. Soil degradation due to agriculture, logging, or invasive plant species can alter how trees grow and even affect the chemical composition of their leaves. As a result, the nutritional quality and toxicity of eucalyptus foliage can change in ways that make them less suitable for koalas. Land restoration efforts now often begin with soil rehabilitation, removing invasive species, reintroducing native ground cover, and encouraging natural cycles of decomposition and nutrient cycling. Water is another vital factor. Koalas are adapted to extract most of their water from eucalyptus leaves, but this strategy only works when the leaves have sufficient moisture. As droughts become more frequent and intense in many parts of Australia, koalas are increasingly observed drinking from artificial water stations, tree trunks, and puddles, something they rarely did in the past. In response, conservation groups have begun installing water stations throughout known koala habitats, especially during the hotter months. These koala drinkers have proven to be life-saving in drought-affected areas, though they are still only a temporary fix. The long-term solution lies in ensuring forests remain hydrated enough to meet the animals' needs naturally. Interestingly, koalas also play a subtle but important role in their own habitat. By feeding selectively on certain trees and branches, they influence the growth patterns of individual eucalyptus trees. Their droppings contribute to nutrient cycling and support soil health. The selective pressure they apply to vegetation can help maintain a balance among eucalyptus species, preventing one type from dominating entirely. This type of top-down influence is more common in large herbivores, but even small-scale grazers like koalas can shape the landscapes around them. Over time, this brings up another often neglected topic, the psychological and emotional side of koala conservation. These animals hold a powerful place in the cultural imagination of Australia and the world. Their round faces, soft ears, and peaceful demeanor evoke empathy and affection in people of all ages. This emotional connection can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it generates public interest, funding, and political pressure to protect the species. On the other hand, it can lead to misconceptions that they are more abundant or safer than they really are. It can also result in well-meaning but misguided actions, like approaching or handling wild koalas, which can cause severe stress to the animal. Educating the public about what koalas actually need, not just what we think they need, is a critical part of long-term conservation. People must learn that koalas are wild animals, not pets, that they are vulnerable, not invincible, and that saving them requires systemic change, not just individual rescue efforts. Campaigns that center these messages, while still using the powerful emotional draw of the koala image, are helping shift the public mindset from pity to responsibility. Another promising area of research is assisted gene flow. This involves deliberately introducing genetic material from one population of koalas into another to reduce inbreeding and increase genetic diversity. For example, if a small, isolated population is suffering from low fertility or increased disease susceptibility due to a limited gene pool, conservationists might relocate individuals from a genetically distinct but compatible group. This approach is delicate and must be guided by thorough genetic screening and ecological compatibility assessments, but it holds enormous potential for strengthening populations and making them more resilient to future challenges. Translocation. A related but more intensive strategy involves physically moving koalas from areas where they are under threat to safer, more sustainable habitats. This has been done in several parts of Australia, sometimes with mixed results. In the past, poorly planned translocations led to overpopulation in new areas, causing deforestation and stress among relocated individuals. Today, lessons from those failures guide a more careful and science-driven approach. Suitable habitat must be available, social structure must be considered, and post-release monitoring is essential to ensure the animals adapt and thrive. At the heart of all of these efforts lies one fundamental truth. The story of the koala is inseparable from the story of the land. You cannot save one without healing the other. This is why many conservationists argue that protecting koalas is not just about preventing extinction. It's about rethinking our relationship with nature altogether. The same actions that preserve eucalyptus forests for koalas also protect other endangered species, sequester carbon, purify water, and stabilize the climate. In this way, the koala becomes a symbol not just of vulnerability, but of opportunity. A chance to make amends and do things differently. This broader perspective is beginning to influence urban design as well. Some cities and towns in koala territory are now integrating wildlife-friendly planning into their development codes. Green corridors, safe road crossings, native plant landscaping, and reduced light pollution all make it easier for koalas to coexist with humans. These changes also benefit other species and improve the overall livability of the area for people. When done well, such urban planning can turn cities from threats into sanctuaries. Koalas are also becoming a symbol in climate activism. They are a recognizable face for a global issue, embodying both the wonder of nature and the urgent danger it faces. Their decline is not just an Australian problem, it is a planetary warning. As ecosystems around the world struggle under the weight of human activity, The koala stands as a quiet, furry reminder that evolution can only carry a species so far. The rest depends on us. Looking ahead, the next few decades will be critical. If current trends continue, koalas could vanish from large portions of their range by the end of this century. But if decisive action is taken now, protecting forests, restoring landscapes, managing disease, and mitigating climate change, the story could be very different. Koalas could not only survive but thrive, their populations stabilized, and their habitats secure. The work is enormous, but the rewards are profound. Every tree planted, every disease treated, every koala sighted in the wild is a small step toward a future where these remarkable animals remain part of Earth's living heritage. The challenge is not just to preserve the species, but to preserve the strange and wondrous idea that evolution could produce something as unlikely and beautiful as the koala. Because in the end, koalas remind us of what makes life on Earth so extraordinary. Not just the fierce or the fast, but the odd, the delicate, the improbable survivors who do one thing very well in a world of infinite possibility. Evolution gave them a strange path, and they followed it faithfully. Now it's our turn to walk with them, to learn from their story, and to make sure that story continues leaf by leaf, tree by tree, generation by generation. And so, the koala's journey, marked by strange evolution, quiet resilience, and deep vulnerability, becomes a reflection of our own. Their fate is now tied to the choices we make, the forests we protect, and the respect we show for the natural world. In saving the koala, we are not just preserving a species. We are choosing to value life in all its forms, even the most peculiar ones. And in that choice, there is still hope.